Chapter 2. Incident on the Void Gate Express. "What do you think are even in these things?" John questioned. He was on his toes, snooping around the topmost layer of packages in the cargo car. The train lurched, and he lost his footing ever so slightly. Catching himself on the netting, holding the larger items in place, he accidentally knocked off a few boxes. The clatter of cardboard hitting the dimly lit floor of the train car caused Kim to stir from her nap. She was unappreciative of the interruption. "John," she said calmly, her eyes still hidden beneath the wide brim of her hat, "please put those back. We're not here to nose into other people's business. Besides that, I was having a great dream and you ruined it." "Sorry, Kimmy." John spoke with weaponized politeness, knowing full well she was not amused by the nickname. He bent over and picked up the two errant packages. The shipping labels had unfortunately fallen off both of them. Not wanting to embarrass himself any further, John quickly reapplied the labels and replaced the packages on the top shelf. He read one of the labels aloud. "Hey, according to the logo on the return address here, there's a guy in Southern Void Gate, one Raymond Steele, that is becoming a fully licensed master logomancer." John furrowed his brow. Why does that name seem so familiar? Kim leaned forward, her eyes now visible from below the brim of her hat. "You're not a master, are you, John?" John leaned against the conspicuously large crate in the middle of the train car, the object they were ostensibly there to guard. A bright red horse head was stamped on the outside of the crate. "No, not yet. Still just a journeyman. The CLG exams for the master distinction are only offered once every 3 years. I'll have my next chance in the spring." John's gaze met Kim's, and he couldn't help but chuckle. "Kimmy, why do you always wear that hat?" "Just sentimental, I suppose. Daddy's little girl at heart." John's attention turned back to the many packages jostling around as the train moved ever further towards Capitol. He absent-mindedly asked, how is he doing anyway? Kim glared. Instantly, John caught his mistake and corrected it.
I'm sorry, Kim. Just an automatic response. I'm forgetful sometimes, but not so much that I'd forget that."
She smiled.
"It's okay, John.
"It's been a long time, and I know you sometimes have the conversational skills of a toddler." John let out a long and exaggerated baby's cry. It was both annoying and sweet. The door slid open, and a man entered the cargo car. His narrow eyes and prominent cheekbones produced a very striking face. Kim sighed to herself. His attractiveness stood in sharp contrast to his generally vile attitude. Always one to force pleasantries, even at the expense of her pride, Kim greeted him. "Cassius, sir. Come to check on the goods?" Cassius did not acknowledge Kim's greeting. He turned back towards the train car he had emerged from and called behind him. "They're both in here already, sir." He stayed in the doorway and held the door open as another man walked into the cargo car. Kim immediately stood to her feet, folded her right arm across her stomach, and bowed. "Knight Commander Anarcum, there is nothing new to report, sir." Commander waved her off. "At ease, Miss Hunter. There's no need for such formality. Save the sirs and salutes for when we have to put on a show in public." "Yes, sir." Kim raised her head to meet the commander's gaze. Knight Commander Orestes Anarcum was a very tall man. His hair seemed to have migrated south over the years, losing its color on the way, and finally settled as a white jungle of a beard. It was certainly his most memorable feature. Orestes turned around and admonished Cassius. "Heartbridge, why are you holding the door? It's a sliding door?" "Sorry, sir, of course. My mistake, sir." Cassius slid the door shut and, clasping his hands behind his back, stood proudly as the important personal guard to Anarcum that he knew he was. "Miss Hunter, Mr. Mueller, it's just after midnight. That means we are entering the territory of the... Which Sniperian species was it again? Mueller!" John paused in thought before answering with authority. "The most likely species here in the Devil's Pass are flying Maychilds. They're basically giant bugs and are repelled by rosemary and salt. More rarely, there have been reports of Kritax in the area. They are four-limbed, spider-like creatures that have razor-sharp claws and severe hydrophobia. It is unlikely they could board the train, but anything is possible, sir." "A very detailed answer, Mr. Mueller. Thank you." John smiled to himself. He may just be a journeyman logomancer, but he prided himself on his folkloric knowledge, especially out here in the wilderness where practical knowledge was the first step towards survival. The commander continued. Hopefully we'll remain bored and the night will pass without incident. Failing that, well, everyone is to be on full alert. Put rosemary into your necklaces and salt the blades of your swords. Just to be sure, everyone should also carry an extra bottle of water in case any Kritax show up. I'll hold watch in the caboose ahead with Heartbridge. At the mention of his name, Cassius perked up. Very good, sir, thank you. The commander sighed and continued. Hunter and Mueller, you will continue watching the cargo itself. I've already told Maximilian and Rutherford to hold watch in the dining car. Kim was already salting the steel blade of her short sword. John followed suit, though his weapons of choice were a pair of silvered combat knives. The commander moved past the swaying cargo to take up his watch in the furthest train car, Cassius following immediately after as if connected by an invisible leash. The doorway to the caboose slid shut, and Kim and John were once again alone in the cargo car. John unzipped one of the pockets on his vest and produced 2 vials. He threw one to Kim. Catch! Kim caught the vial and spun it around to read the label. Rosemary? How'd you know I'd forget? You always forget, Kim. You're certainly a lot quicker with that blade than I am, but you're a terrible planner. If you don't smell like a 5-star restaurant's pantry due to the spice rack strapped to your chest, you're just not a true knight. John smirked. You are a better cook, I'll give you that. Kim sprinkled some of the rosemary into the vial on her necklace and put the remainder away in one of her pockets. There was a moment of silence. Looking out the small windows, Kim could see nothing but endless blackness. The soothing ka-thunk of the train as it plowed forward into the darkness was both ominous and comforting. This anticipation, this fear, is what she loved most about her job. The sense of absolute awareness of your own being, the intimacy of combat and the pride of the kill was a thrill that was second to none. Kim's wistful thoughts were ruined as John spoke. Have you ever wondered why the mayor logo is a horse head? He was picking at the edges of the logo embroidered into the front of his uniform. Do you think it's a Mazinski family sigil? Heraldic, maybe? I thought Mazinski was a Forstachian surname. I guess I don't know when they first immigrated. I know the A in Mare stands for aerospace, so why not a space-themed logo? Kim cut John's inane rambling short. John, you do know what a mare is. It's a female horse? She held her hands out. The mystery of the logo is solved. John's face lit up. Oh! A pause. And we're the nightmares because we're the knights working for Mare? John's tone was ambiguous, somewhere between sarcasm and genuine inquiry, a delicate balance that had served him well in the past. Kim saw through this, though. I know that tone, John. You think you're making a joke, but I know you just had an epiphany. So we're not just a bad dream, then? John laughed half-heartedly, clearly sensing Kim was onto him. John's smile faded. Please don't tell anyone I just figured that out, especially not the commander. Her preparations done, Kim leaned back in her chair and tipped her hat over her eyes. No promises, John. I expect at least a week's worth of your mom's chili, may she rest in peace, before I'll even think about keeping it to myself. Orestes looked out into the darkness behind the train, his hands clutching the brass railing separating him from the all-encompassing darkness beyond. His uniform was much more ornate than the other members, but for good reason. The red horse head that constituted the Mare logo emblazoned on his collar was inlaid with fine gold stitching, a garment made for a true leader of men. He produced 2 cigars from his overcoat and held them out for the waiting paw of Cassius. Cassius lit them and handed one back to the commander. Orestes' gaze never left the swirling void stretching out in front of him. He pinched the cigar between his fingers. Raising it to his lips, he paused to commemorate the occasion. It's the anniversary, Cassius. Yes, sir, I know. To your father. May he rot in the abyss. Orestes turned back to face Cassius. Never dishonor the memory of your father. Whatever he was in life doesn't matter anymore. With all due respect, sir, he never gave me anything besides the misfortune of being born his son. If you were not his son, I would not have been there that day. Yes, that is true, sir. So again I say, to your father, his hazy life is one I will never regret taking. His loss is my gain, sir. The 2 men blew smoke into the night. Cassius, what is the most important quality in a person? Cassius thought for a moment, but couldn't quite figure out where Orestes was heading. I don't know, sir. Love? Love? No. Love is important, but not the most important. The most important quality is loyalty. Very good, sir. Who are you loyal to, Cassius?
God.
I have no god, sir. The company, then. They give me purpose, and I'm grateful because they gave me you, but I'm not loyal to them.
Family.
I'm loyal to you, sir. Nothing else matters. Good, Cassius, because I will need your loyalty, and your love, and your devotion before this night is done. You already have it. Goddess be praised, Cassius. A thunderous crack sounded in the distance, followed by a large bang. Cassius jumped at the noise. Orestes was unfazed. Was that thunder, sir? No, Cassius, I think not. It seems like we won't be bored tonight. Sorry to cut the celebrations short, but go check on Rutherford and Maximilian. Yes, sir. What about you, sir? I'll stay here for now. It's bad luck not to finish a good cigar. Kim shot up from her chair the second she heard the crack. John readied his salted knives and nodded to Kim. She slid open the door to the dining car and entered sword first. Inside the dining car, she could see Rutherford, sword ready, staring up at the feet of Maximilian. Max had climbed the access ladder near the kitchen and was poking his head up to survey the roof of the train car. There was another loud crack, and Maximilian fell back into the dining car. Rutherford caught him before he slammed into the metal serving trays near the ladder. Kim spoke first. What did you see, Max? Rutherford helped Max back to his feet. It's definitely a Kritak. There's one on the roof. I couldn't see any more in the darkness, but they usually hunt alone. How'd they land on the roof, though? Rutherford responded curtly. Good jumpers. There was another loud crack, and the ceiling on the train car visibly buckled. John ran to the window to confirm a suspicion. It had started raining. This is very bad. It's raining. The Kritaks hate water and will do pretty much anything to get away from it. I'd say that means we have about 5 seconds. Kim backed up to the sliding door. Rutherford, Max, back up now. No sooner had Kim's instructions finished than the hatch to the roof shot straight down into the train car where Max was just standing. Following behind was the dark, scaly form of a Kritak. It thrashed on the ground, its 4 pointed legs flailing in a desperate attempt to clean the water off of its back. The torrent of angry flesh and talons cleanly separated Kim and John from Max and Rutherford. They seemed entranced by the flailing monstrosity, but Kim was much more interested in its efficient death. You two, check the passenger cars, now! I need to have eyes on all potential targets as soon as possible. Do not approach them as long as they are wet. Go! Yes, ma'am. The two turned and went to check the passenger cars. John? Kim shouted. I'm right here. No need to yell. How do we calm it? Door behind them slid open and Cassius walked in, holding a vial with a wick sticking out of it. Fire, of course. Cassius lit the wick and tossed the burning potion onto the thrashing beast. The liquid in the vial caught fire and instantly covered the Kritak in a layer of flames. Cassius moved fearlessly past the immolated creature and towards the passenger cars. He stopped and addressed Kim. I take it Max and Rutherford went this way. Yes, sir. Good. Finish this thing off. There may be more. Cassius turned and continued on to the passenger cars. The Kritak stopped thrashing, its coat of water evaporated, but it continued to burn. It seemed unbothered by this fact. John stumbled on his words. That thing is on a lot of fire. Kim kicked the Kritak as hard as she could with her boot, launching it into a nearby booth with a loud clatter. The creature's fiery back scraped across the wood table and flopped onto the floor, inadvertently clothing itself in the fine lace of the tablecloth. We need to not burn the train down, John. I'm on it. Keep it occupied for 60 seconds. John ran back into the cargo car, leaving Kim alone with the daintily dressed yet burning monstrosity. She picked up a metal serving tray off the ground and held it in front of her. The Kritak let out a screech and leapt at her. She raised her metal shield to block and was shunted backwards by the impact. The creature had much more strength than she thought. Using the tray as a guide, she kicked the Kritak away again. Not waiting for it to recover, she followed behind and brought her sword down on one of the creature's exposed legs, amputating it in one swift strike. The creature cried in pain and began thrashing with its 3 remaining claws. One claw caught Kim in her right forearm, piercing it all the way through. Kim looked at the jagged claw sticking through her arm and thought aloud in a detached manner, "That is going to hurt soon. No time for pain now." Kim dropped her sword as an involuntary reflex. Based on the location of the stab, she was fairly certain that her arm was not broken, but there may be a good deal of nerve damage. Using her left arm, she wrenched the Kritak's claw free from her right arm, but fell backwards, having pushed too hard. On the ground and weaponless, she thought things could be going better. In addition, the creature's ridiculous lace dress was now also on fire.
John burst back through the door with a gigantic wool blanket in his hands. Seeing Kim on the ground, he threw the blanket over the smoldering creature first and then helped her up. I restrain, you finish it. John leapt onto the creature, now smothered in the thick blanket. The fire snuffed out. John tried his best to avoid the remaining claws as they thrashed about. Now's a good time, Kim. Kim couldn't feel her right hand and noticed her short sword had managed to somehow make it underneath the wool blanket that John was now riding like a bucking bull. She scanned the ground and spotted the Kritak's severed claw. Breaking in half at its joint, she gripped the claw in her left hand and thrust confidently through the wool blanket at where she judged its tiny head to be. The creature cried out and then fell silent. Removing the claw with a juicy squelch, a thick black stain appeared on the blanket. Panting, John got up and surveyed the damage to the dining car. He removed what he could of the blanket and patted down the small fire that had begun to spread to the curtains in the booth where the Kritak had found its lace dress. Turning to Kim, he saw the deep cut in her right arm. It should be coming back about now, huh? Yes, I should feel it about now. Kim fell backwards and blacked out, the pain of the wound having finally caught up with her. John rushed to her aid and pulled a syringe from his vest. He removed the cap on the needle and applied the concoction directly into her arm. Kim gasped as she regained consciousness. John explained, some antibiotics and a painkiller. He produced a roll of bandages and dressed her wound as best he could. I'm no doctor, but this will have to do for now. Kim's vision was blurry, but the pain of the chopped nerves in her right arm was now very far away. Cassius re-entered from the passenger car, Max and Rutherford not far behind. John asked a pertinent question. Are there any more? Is everyone okay? Cassius looked at the mess and then to John. Not anymore. Another had attempted to cut through the roof into the passenger's car, but it fell off the roof during the last bend in the tracks. How did this one even get into the car? With all due respect, I don't think it matters at this point, sir. John was in no mood for Cassius's pointless questions, regardless of his rank. Watch your tongue, John. He turned his attention to Kim. Can you stand up, Hunter? Kim was in a wonderland far beyond the petty bickering around her. She stared off into the beautiful cylinder of rain gently pouring down from the hole in the roof, and could almost see time itself skip and jump in the crystalline droplets. I gave her a shot. She was stabbed right through the arm by one of the Kritak's claws. A shot of what? A painkiller, sir. You mean a syringe of Harbor Haze, Cassius shouted. Yes, sir, and it's going to save her life. Unbelievable. Max, Rutherford, make sure this drug addict and his whore don't go anywhere. John stood up and looked Cassius in the eyes. I'd watch your words, sir. His enunciation of the final syllable biting like the most bitter insult. Cassius met his gaze. Are you threatening me, you worthless talking afterbirth? Max and Rutherford were both very uncomfortable with the exchange. Max tried to break the tension. I think we need to calm down. We just killed 2 Kritaks. That's cause for celebration. John and Cassius continued their staring contest. I can see a ghost, Kim said distantly, her eyes still trained on the cascade of rain. This broke John from his manly eye duel with Cassius. What did you say, Kim? I can see its face. It's right there. It has no eyes, only a mouth. Kim pointed to the rain pouring into the train car. John looked but saw nothing. He asked, Where is it now, Kim? Her finger drew across the room and stopped at Max. John looked towards Max with desperation in his eyes. Max, I'm so sorry. There was a loud crunch, and Maximilian fell to the ground dead. The Aspect of Separation is a novel by Jeffrey Nordine. On the next episode, Steel Edge Antiquities.